In this lesson, we'll work on creating additional airframe structure. After completing this lesson, you'll be able to create a projected sketch and extrude a new body. Through the beginning of this course, we took on the role of the designer, creating the shape and the idea that we wanted in terms of our quadcopter design. Now, as the engineer role, we want to make sure that we understand the forces that are going to be involved with this design. Now, we're going to have 4 motors with 4 propellers that are creating a lot of thrust in order to get this thing off the ground. As we look at the design now, there's not a lot of structure underneath. Now, we've done our part in the designer phase to make sure that we've created a fairly thick body, that we've added some additional structure, we made this I-beam shape, and we've pretty much passed it off to the engineer to the point where they can start adding some additional structure where needed. As we look at this design, we're not really to the point where we can create a structural analysis because we're going to need the component tray and we're going to need its mounting points created so that we can analyze that within the structural analysis. So at this point, we want to focus on areas that we know are going to need some help. The first area is going to be the area that's around the prop path that doesn't necessarily have any airflow through it. Now, the main idea behind this is we want the least amount of obstruction as possible for the propeller. We're allowing it to pull air through this opening here as we go down into the landing gear. We have this small opening here, and we have a small amount of structure going back to the center of the craft. This large opening here allows for a lot of flex in the design. If we were to 3D print this as is right now, this thing would be able to bend and twist quite a bit. So we want to do our part by adding some additional structure back in here. We've already added this boss in this single area. That's going to allow us to have a bit more structure. We're going to be able to carry this over into the farther side of the craft. So the first thing that we want to do is go back through some of our old sketches to see if we have that geometry already created. Now, from the top-down cut sketch, this is the area that we want to create an extrude for. So we're going to create a new sketch on the top plane. We're going to select XZ, create a new sketch. In this small offset edge here, I'm going to bring in by hitting P on the keyboard and projecting it. If we turn off the top-down sketch and take a look, we now have this outside path, which was, if I remember correctly, 1 millimeter offset from the path of the propeller. So there's a small amount of gap here. The next thing that we want to do is again use P on the keyboard to project, and we want to bring in the inside edges here of this design. This is going to account for all the edges and the fillets, everything that we've created here, and not take into account any original sketch geometry that was created before some of the geometry, such as this rib and this cut that we added, were in place. So once we have that, I'm going to go ahead and rotate this around. I'm actually going to hide the X-star body, and I'm going to stop my sketch. I want to create a new extrude of this profile here. And for the profile start and extent, we're going to be using our surfaces for body top and body bottom. So we want to start from body bottom, and we want to go up to body top. By default, because we've already hidden the X-star body, this is going to be a new body. But you want to make sure that we are creating a new body here because it's going to simplify some of the additional operations that we need to create. We're going to go ahead and say OK. We're going to show the X-star body and take a look at the geometry that we've added. So you can see in this area that we've added a small amount. Now if we zoom and we go take a look at, in this case, the front propeller, I'm going to expand this. And notice that in this case, we can't actually turn on the prop path for this body. That's because this was the original linked version. Now if we open this, if we go into show hide or display detail control, we don't actually have the ability to change that within here without opening that file externally. But that's okay because by just simply showing this and selecting it on the screen, we get this preview of the prop path. So we know that we have that small amount of gap here. So we're going to minimize this in the browser. And once we're happy with the small amount of material here, we're going to go ahead and save our file so we can move on to the next step.